All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy to have everybody back for our fifth episode of Road to Revenue, and even more excited to have a guest host and guest speaker that many of you probably know out there, Paul Estrada. I had the fortunate pleasure of meeting Paul a handful of years ago as I entertained him as an enterprise shipper, and quickly learned that Paul and I had a lot of common things in place. Even though he was a shipper and I was the provider, Paul, one thing that stood out with me from our first time together was that he thought sales could be better in general across the industry. And myself, as being a commercial leader and sales leader and thinking about the future of the market across our space, agrees with that wholeheartedly. And that's a lot of our message as well, is really how do we elevate the sales experience, but ultimately, how do we work back from providing a best in class buyer experience? So, from Paul's lens of buying many different transportation solutions, he's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of all things sales. And we hope to dive into all of those fun stories and anecdotes that help companies and salespeople stand out from the rest. So, with that, wanted to say welcome to Paul Estrada. Looking forward to our time together and excited about the content we'll be able to share with everybody here today. Welcome,
Yeah,
Paul.
thanks for having me, Dan. I think so. One thing I want to start with is I did some math because I've been basically in a buyer seat for the better part of 18 years, and I just kind of looked at how the average number of solicitations or outreach that I get on a weekly basis, and it's north of 10,000 solicitations, whether it's through LinkedIn, emails, what have you. So when I say that I've seen all of it, I genuinely believe that I've seen everything.
I'm actually curious how many I'm responsible for over the course of your
A
18
handful
years
at
being at a
least.
handful of the companies you've done business with.
Yeah, no doubt.
So Paul, like and that leads me to my first question for you is like, okay, just tell me about the universe then. So you have this library of like experiential experience, right? Of like I've experienced it firsthand. Give me a grade. Like logistics salespeople in general are A, B, C, D, E, or E, I guess. A, B, C, D, F. Like, and it's fine. You can be critical.
That's a great question. I have been thinking about it. I don't have other industries to compare it to, so I'm kind of doing it in a bubble. But I believe in general that the outreach within logistics is just horrendously bad and getting worse, by the way, with AI. I think people think AI is making it better. I genuinely believe it's making it worse. If you're asking me to put a grade on it, I'd say D plus C minus.
Okay.
Yeah, really bad.
Probably peg it close to that myself.
Really bad.
Trending down, trending towards an E, whatever school system James went to.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
screwed up with
exactly.
the E grade. I don't know what happened. My parents are both teachers, so they'd be kind of mad at me. So maybe follow-up question to that. Okay, so like outreach being really poorly graded. What about your sales experience? So they get their foot in the door. Is it any better past like outreach, or is it still low grade and low bar?
So when you've been doing it as long as I have, I've come up with a very robust vetting process. So it's going to be hard to even get to the meeting at this point. And it really just stemmed from this thought of just I am so sick of wasting my time. Right? Like I have a full-time job to do. Like I'm a buyer. I have people to answer to, reports to do, people to manage. Like the sourcing piece is important, but it's not my full-time job. And I was just getting frustrated with the amount of time that I was putting into the actual vetting process. And so I've actually created a very robust. So you won't get a meeting unless you've gotten through three gates to begin with. And yeah, even to that point, even with as good as I think the vetting process is, you still into a couple duds fairly often.
I like that is the way to put it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Paul, before we jump into like experience on like the sales process, there's a lot of other ways to like knock on your door via obviously emails like mass quantity, but there's phone calls, there's conferences. A lot of our industry used to show up at dock doors and knock on those with donuts and stuff like that. So you've probably seen a lot of those other ways
Yeah.
of getting a hold of you and who you represent. How do you see the other front end of the sales process?
I mean, I'm definitely biased to LinkedIn right now. I spend a lot of time on there. I think I see a ton of brokers, carriers on LinkedIn. I don't see a lot of shippers. I think we're what we call, for the most part, lurkers, meaning we are on there. We're just not commenting. We're not posting. I'm the exception, probably. There's another guy that enterprise shipper that I see. Him and I talk now. We met through LinkedIn, and so we kind of share stories. I think LinkedIn definitely is the way to go. And I think people think about it in the sense of, okay, I need to like again, if you treat LinkedIn like it's email, then you're not doing any better, right? So LinkedIn is intended to be something different where
Yep.
you comment on people's things, where if you do an outreach, maybe it's not as direct as it would be via email. Like that's really relationship building first than it is just let me come in on the very first outreach and just hit you with my PDF file, right? It's like, no, like we're building relationships first. And I think people don't understand that part, but there are some that I see that are starting to make really big improvements in that area. One area that has really been standing out to me lately are people that take the time to send video messages. I read or I watch every single one of those. It's just short, usually like 45 seconds to a minute. It's pretty unique. I maybe received, well, now that I say this out loud, I'm sure I'll receive a lot more, but I've probably received like 5 or 6 of those, and I've watched every single one and like from the beginning to the very end. It doesn't mean I'm going to do business with you, but I do think it's a fascinating and different way to approach it.
All right, last question I have.
Sorry, I got a funny story because like I gotta just ask about those quality because I got one the other day and I started watching it 10 seconds and I turned it off. It was the creepiest thing like I've experienced. I was like, this feels awful. So I'm questioning just like, have you gotten good quality? Because I've seen a couple of those recently selling to me personally, and I'm like, ooh, I delete right pretty quick.
Well, I think, James, maybe what you're experiencing is a lack of genuineness. I guess,
Okay.
is that a word? Genuineness. To me, like, because I've done this so much, it becomes pretty apparent to me when somebody is like genuinely wanting to get to know you versus I'm literally just trying to get my foot in the door. So, like, for example, you go on my LinkedIn profile, it'll tell you I went to Cal State Fullerton. It'll tell you that I coach Little League Baseball, that I'm level 2 on Duolingo. Like, you can learn a couple things about me, or that I have a podcast, right? And it's like, hey, saw your podcast. I'm so and so, and this is my company, right? It's like, okay, like, so you thought you personalized it by saying saw your podcast or saw that you went to Cal State Fullerton, go Titans. I'm so and so with this company, right? So that's not genuine, right? It's like I think there's like this BS meter that you have where if you seem like you're trying to build a genuine connection. I had this guy that just like literally had his phone up like this, and he's just like walking through a park or like somewhere, I don't know, and he's just like, hey, I listened to episode 5 of your podcast. There was this one section that really resonated with me, and he talked specifically about that section, so I know he listened to it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's really going 1 or 2 steps further and creating like a genuine connection. And it just and that's where I say AI is making it worse. Is like, to me, that's actually going the opposite direction of creating a genuine connection.
Well, let me ask you. You said that you had 3 gates that people had to make it past, right? So what about when you know someone or you have a referral or a warm introduction through your network? Does that kind of bypass that process?
Yeah, that happens often. So we'll have, let's say, that somebody will go up to our CEO level, and then they'll ping it over to me. It's like, well, I have to respond to this one because that came from right. But that feels more like like I just like a have to, right? Like I have to because it doesn't necessarily. So I may take a 10 or 15-minute meeting or a quick email back and forth. That doesn't necessarily change the actual sales cycle or anything. Like I stick to my principles as far as what I'm looking for. So sure, yeah, it may get you a very brief meeting just out of professional courtesy, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
So a lot of people provide similar like services that you would consume based on the role that you're in today. What, before you even take a meeting, besides the personalization, is there anything from like a company marketing perspective, a value prop that you want to hear, a new mode or service? Like, how does something get you outside of just the personalized outreach and like, okay, they check the box on like something that's meaningful and intentional? Like, what perks your interest from like a product or service that they sell?
So let me start by this. There's 4 people. I've really thought long and hard about this. There's 4 people that I think can get a meeting, right? One, people can't necessarily control in their career, and that is if you're like the CEO of a billion-dollar carrier that I know of, and I probably have because I've been doing this for a while. I'm gonna take and you want to meet with me. My ego is gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna take a call with. I want to build my network too. I'm gonna take this call, right? That doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. Another thing would be if you're somebody that I've worked with before. So people bounce from this company to that company. If I thought you really did a great job of servicing my account, I'm definitely going to take your phone call, right? It's somebody that I'm going to want to do business with. There's, something that we call luck timing. So it's
Yeah.
just literally you reached out to me and you said the exact right thing at the exact right time, exactly when I needed it. That's probably happened like less than five times in my career. And what's crazy is I feel like the vast majority of sales outreach tries to live in that space. Like hey, I just literally, it's like I'm gambling in Las Vegas and I just rolled the dice and I hit the perfect number at the perfect time. That's not like a world that I think people can live in. The last one that I think people have the most control over is you have something meaningful to say. I don't care if you're a front level employee, I don't care if you're the CEO. If you genuinely have a unique perspective, a unique take on something, and like I said, like you're genuine with the communication, I'll take that. And going back to LinkedIn, what I see working really well is there's been probably 10 people now where I don't know that person at all, but I see their content, they're getting into my feed, and I'm just like, this person has a really, really interesting perspective, and I will reach out to them, right? Like it's not even like they're reaching out to me, I'll reach out to them, and I built, relationships that way. So like that's what I view as like the really important thing. So it's less about saying the right thing, offering the right thing. Yeah, every once in a while there's something, but there's so much fluff in the sales cycle now that, and all the buzzwords that
Yep.
like you kind of become desensitized to that stuff that I don't think there's like that silver bullet.
No, that's awesome.
You need to optimize your supply chain is what you need to do, Paul.
Tech enabled, 99% OTD. We service the continental US perfectly all the
On
time.
time and full, 100%.
Yes,
That's what Paul needs to hear.
And that's on it. Like we're joking about it, but that's what it
Yeah,
is.
that's what
That's
comes out.
literally what it is.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I like I always like the challenger sales, right? And like thinking about challenger sale, you think about teaching, and I think there's always this really great moment of having some sort of insight, some sort of piece that you're like, oh, that caught my attention. And so like I think kind of boiling that down, it's like, hey, you got to catch my attention. And what's not going to catch my attention? Stats and figures about my company, my on-time performance, whatever. Like I'm assuming, Paul, you would expect that's a given. Like if they're calling you as an enterprise shipper, you're expecting that they're going to be able to do what they say they can do. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
So
but unfortunately, you don't. You should. I say you should.
yes.
But because anybody can write words on a screen, like that's super easy. So as a buyer, you have to be able to like try to read between the lines and see who's legit and who's not. Because everyone, it's table stakes. Everybody's saying the same thing. How can I actually either ask the right question or read between the line in a way that says, okay, this person's a little bit different.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So Paul, you mentioned LinkedIn is a great channel. I agree. What about like cell phone? Like if somebody calls your cell phone, are you picking up? Like, how's that? What do you view about that mode? Is it appropriate to reach out and when?
For me personally, no. And I honestly haven't received outreach via my cell phone, and I can't even tell you the last time that I had one. So I don't know. Well, first of all, my email signature, I deleted my cell. I don't have a desk line either, so I think it might be hard to find my number unless people are paying Dan to give it out. I don't think it's easy to find my number, so I don't receive that. I will tell you this though. I will. There was a guy one time who, and I don't want to exaggerate here. I'm gonna say he called me at the exact same time. It was like 2 p.m. my time every single day for like over 100 days. And and I never picked up once, and he left a voicemail every single time. And I think, in sales, sometimes people look at that as like, oh, it's my persistence is eventually going to pay off. And I think somebody mentioned like, hey, is that just kind of creepy? I'm like, dude, at some point, get the hint, right? It's like it became almost a game for me where I was just like, how many days can this guy actually call me? Like talking to my coworker, like, what's the over under, guys, on when this guy's going to finally stop? And I don't even remember what that was, but it was over 100 for sure, right? And I never picked up the phone once, so that's my 2 cents on that.
All right. Well,
I think I saw literally the opposite story on LinkedIn. People posting about kind of glorifying like, oh, this person persistent for every day. They called for 2 years, and finally they got an opportunity. Like, that just shows you got to be persistent in sales. So I think there's a difference between being persistent and just insanity, right?
I mean,
I'm
it's
giving you
20
my
years.
yeah.
20 years later, professional persistence still matters, in my opinion. Like, I remember the first deal I closed, I walked out of there as like a 22-year-old salesperson, and the guy in charge of the company said, like, hey, you got this guy who's like professionally persistent. It's why this deal got done. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool to hear. And 20 years later, I think there's still the same balance, in my opinion.
But let's talk about what in my mind professional persistence. And by the way, guys, I would preface this by saying this is my perspective. I'm sure everyone approaches it differently, but that's my perspective.
Yeah, I'd love to
Is
hear what you think about that.
let's talk about what professional persistence is, in my opinion, because there is such a thing as persistence that I think can work. What doesn't work is, like, let's use this guy that is calling me and literally saying the same thing over and over and over again, right? That's, I guess, technically by definition, that's persistence. Versus somebody that maybe they outreach and they've done it maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 times, but every single time they come, there's something relevant that they're trying to say, right? So it's like, hey, the first time maybe they took this approach and they mentioned this part that they thought might be relevant to your business. It didn't work. A lot of people's next step would be like, hey, not sure if you saw this. Yeah, I saw it. It wasn't relevant for me to respond, or bumping this to the top of my email, or just checking back in before I remove you from my call list, right? That's technically follow up. That's technically persistence, but I don't think that works, right?
Yeah,
Now, if you're
fair.
somebody that is persistent, you come back and you say, all right, well, that angle, that approach didn't work the first time. Now, this time, maybe you saw something in the news. Maybe we opened a manufacturing facility where you've got a hub or something that's a reason why you're following back up again. Then sure, I think persistence absolutely can work. I don't think most people understand the difference between that type of persistence and bumping this to the top of your inbox persistence.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm gonna ask a question, and because I think there's also, like, I like your point, JT. Like, there's this perception on LinkedIn, and it's like personified of like, you just have to grind, and like, unfortunately, like, the logistics transportation brokerage world, there's a lot of grinders, right? So like, that call every day, that person's like, I freaking called that person 100 days. And unfortunately, if you would have answered in the 101, you probably would have set a pattern for the rest of his life of like how success works. You got to call 101 times. But the other piece that I find that's pervasive is like this like singular email that you can write, the perfect email. And if you write the perfect email, all it takes is just like spend 17 minutes doing the right research with the right perfect email, lob that over one time, and it's going to win. Paul, like, what's your perspective there on that?
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people. I've just become very fascinated by this. I've never been on your side of the table, but I do have an appreciation for it. And there's something like outreach that, even if it's the worst outreach, gets a response way less than 1% of the time. And I believe, though, I've seen some emails or outreach come across that I think are really great, that I still don't respond to. Right? So it's like, what the heck, Paul? And that outreach maybe gets a response 5% of the time, but that's still way better than less than 1% of the time. I think that's something where there's a component that you can have some of the highest quality outreach and it's still not going to work because timing still matters too. And you don't control that, right? Like, you could say the perfect thing. Now, what you may do is you might get my attention and plant a seed. I may not respond, but I'll be like, hey, James, James said something really, I'm not interested right now, but he said something really interesting. And next time that name hits my inbox or that company name, I'm like, I'm going to probably read this one at least. I still may not respond, but I'm going to read this one. And I think that, that makes a difference.
Great.
So you mentioned timing, Paul. Can we get into like a couple of examples, like within logistics, like what kind of events would be relevant in your opinion to where you responded to somebody because they called at the right time? Is that like a change in your business or a change in the macro environment? Like, any examples of that?
Yeah, it could be, but like, it's say in a shifting market, for example. But again, it can't just be the case that you reach out and I need capacity. Sure, of course, everybody needs capacity, right? It's more, I just came out of a meeting. We were talking about capacity specific out of PA going into the Northeast, and that person, however way, found out that I needed capacity in that specific region or on that specific lane. Then I'm like, oh, you know what? Perfect. You come to the front of the line. I need this right now. Like, let's get going. And I think there's a number of ways that people are starting to do that, like whether you're looking at, let's say, a load board. And I know, a lot of that is democratized or it's a little ambiguous. It doesn't explicitly say like what, but I think people that do their research enough know, oh, this commodity type, this weight from this origin point to that origin point. Okay, this is probably, I could say with a high degree of probability, this is this person, right? Oh, they've got 20 loads hitting the spot market. They clearly need some help here. Let me reach out and talk to them about that.
Yeah. Smart.
Hey, Paul, I think there's a ton of good nuggets here on the front end of the sales process, especially around our perspective of just making sales better and being better at sales and having more thoughtful approaches. Where we'd probably like to wrap some of our thoughts is like the post, like introduction part of the sales process, like when they come and visit you in person. Does in person mean more than remote? Do you generally take remote first, and then like how do you see like what wows you through like a discovery like pursuit process that's like, okay, these are folks that I wanna sign on with and do business with?
Yeah, so if you made it through the gauntlet, right? Like if you made it through all the layers and you actually got the meeting, I'm still like I'm old school, I guess, but I'm still a big fan of in person. I just think there's so much that you
Same.
capture, especially like in the before the meeting and after the meeting, like walking through the lobby, we're just kind of chit chatting, having casual conversation. And then you get into the nuts and bolts in the meeting itself. But I think the one thing that I still see missing often is people come in, they've got their glossy deck. It's typically, you see their network map, you see if their asset, you see their truck, their beautiful new truck that they purchased, like all lined up, like perfectly perpendicular in their yard, right? It's all the same stuff, right? When you the and nobody really personalizes some do, the really good ones do personalize it, which I love to see. But people come in and they're like, and I get it, right? Like you're so excited, you got the meeting, you're pumped, and they just go into the sales switch, oh, and like literally, they will just talk for 5, 7, 10 minutes straight, like getting red in the face, like running out of breath, like take a breath, dude, like come up for air, right? But I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I just think that whole active listening component is missing. It's like, hey, you can come in here and do show and tell about your company, but why do I care? Like, explain to me specifically why I shouldn't have to, as the buyer, go flip through all these decks. Like, okay, you do your charity work, and by the way, I love that you do charity work. But okay, here's with all your logos that you work with. Okay, I don't care. Like, I don't care. What does this mean for me? Why does this matter for me? And I think people could do a better job of just like absorbing information and then crafting the sales approach to that. Like if you got 12 slides and I go down this and I say, hey guys, my needs are really here. Okay, I'm going to flip past slides 3, 4, and 5. We should talk about slide 6 because that's the one that I see an opportunity here. And I just don't think enough people do that. Like they just come in with their playbook and they execute their playbook, and there's no active listening or adjustments being made on the fly.
Sure. Good point. Hey, let me preface this. So, like, have you worked at like what we would call maybe like an SMB? Like we talk a lot about enterprise shipper. Have you been in like that small, medium sized business, manufacturer, distributor, that sort of thing in your career?
Have I worked on that side?
Yeah.
I've worked on the carrier side for about a year.
Okay, but like
so I've seen a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, for the shipper side, like
I've always been at the same.
Okay.
Shipper. Yeah.
In your mind, though, what changes from like just knowing that you've been on the enterprise side? Like, what would you think different? Just as you think about, there's 1,000 maybe really big enterprise shippers out there, and then 50,000 plus small shippers out there. When you think about that, do you think the tactics change? Do you think the messaging change, or is it all really, really similar?
You probably don't have to be as technical in terms of like your messaging. I think if I think back, because like when I started at my company, we were way smaller than we are today. And if I could say, if I could go back to those days, so for example, today I have an embarrassment of resources. I can talk to our sourcing team, I can talk to our analytics team, our CI team, or you name it. There's somebody at our company that does that, right? When I think about a small to medium sized business, they're wearing 10 hats, right? Like they literally, if they take a day off, they probably can't take a day off, one, or two, if they take a day off, whoever's left at the office is probably just drowning because like they're just running that thin. So if you're a small, medium-sized business, it's like, hey, I've got 10 things going on. I've got to be managing the dock. I got to go look at inventory. I got to go do inventory count. Like, right. Like as a capacity provider, how can I take and alleviate this pressure off their plate and just come to them and then know like if I onboard this person, it's not going to cause me more headaches. I don't have to be emailing with this person 10 times a day. I don't have to, well, whatever the case may be, just create as the least amount of friction as possible and just pursue it in a way where it's I know you're extremely busy doing a number of different things. Let me be, and you don't have a budget for a transportation provider on your team. Let me be that person for you in every way, shape, and form. I'll give you the analytics that you want to give up to your boss. I'll give you, hey, if you're spending 2 hours on transportation every day, and you could be spending that on this other function, let me take that off your plate. So I think it's very similar in a lot of ways. Maybe not, like I said, it just doesn't have to be as mature in the approach, but I think we're all dealing with the same problems.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, I'm going to take us home here today, and I super appreciate all the time and perspective you've had here. You're probably going to have some new forms of outreach coming your way, so appreciate you being able to combat those off. I also think something that we didn't necessarily have time to jump on, and maybe you'll host us back on your podcast, is the generational perspective of buyers and sellers are now mostly majority millennials, and I think that's going to change the game a lot too in terms of like, we lived most of our life with technology. We expect certain things from the way that we experience things. And now the majority of buyers in the world will come from that perspective. So I think that's going to change the game on top of all the other stuff that's helping it. But I think you've been on the same timeline, but different side of the table than most of us for many of the time. So I greatly appreciate your time and perspective, and we'll keep in touch with you. And cheers.
Yeah. Great talking to you guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Awesome.